Hey, what's up out there, everybody? Alex here with a video response for Rick from Vintage Oddball Cards. Rick is having a 300 subscriber contest, and he wants us to talk about cards that we have in our collection that are miscut or off-center. And I figured this would be a great opportunity to do a video that I've been thinking about doing for a while, which is going back to the old tried and true, the 53 Bowman color set that I finished last year. One of the things that I tried to do building this set over the 2 years that I did was to try to find cards that were as centered as possible. And it just so happens that this set is particularly notorious for being off-center. So I really had my work cut out for me, did the best I could, and still was not able to fully pull it off. So thought I would highlight some of the cards that I think are particularly difficult to find centered in this set. So I quickly went through and pulled a few of them and thought we could look through them and kind of see the condition of them. So first up is Phil Rizzuto. You can see that it's a little off left to right, and just generally speaking, if you're looking for a 53 Phil Rizzuto, probably going to have some difficulty finding one that's decently centered. So on to a more obscure player, common card. This is Paul Minner from the Cubs. This is a card that I held off on getting for a long time and was one of the last, I'd say, 10 or 15 cards that I got. And you can see it's still off top to bottom. And I just kind of gave up. I said this was maybe the best one I was going to find. You can see it's a near mint 7, but the centering is off. So perhaps could find another one out there, but at some point you got to pull the trigger. This next one's a fun story. This is Joe Nuxhall. I had a heck of a time trying to find one centered and just with good print quality. And at a certain point, I just gave up in terms of trying to find slab cards. When I was at the National last year in Chicago, I started looking through raw cards, and a bunch of YouTubers were helping me look for raw cards as well during the show. And I came across this one. I got it for, I don't know, maybe 45 bucks or something like that, maybe a little less. Got it slabbed, and it came back a 4, but I'm extremely happy with the centering on this card. You're not going to be able to find a Joe Nuxhall very easily that looks as good in terms of centering. Here's a really cool card, a common, but all the cards in this set are pretty awesome. So this is Hector Rodriguez. You're not going to come across, once again, an example of this card that is centered very easily. They're pretty few and far between, so when this one popped up, I went after it pretty quickly. And here's a name that everyone's going to recognize, the Duke of Flatbush, Duke Snider. Again, all sorts of problems with this card. Registration issues in terms of the focus and centering issues for sure. All things considered, I'm really happy with this one, and I also got a good deal on it. So it's not perfect, but when you're trying to collect this set, this is one that you have to feel good about if you find it centered and also with good registration. One of the things that I noticed putting this set together is that the portrait cards in particular are difficult to find centered, and I think it's kind of like an optical illusion. The portrait cards, it's like there's not much to look at. You're kind of, it's a close-up of the guy's face. There's, really not much else to look at. And I think because of that, the borders of the card just stand out so much more. And that makes, kind of looking for the centering all the more distracting. So here's good old Harry Bird, the best name in this set. Harry Bird gave me some serious trouble in terms of trying to find a centered example. So you can see this is a near mint 8. I rarely got 8s when I built this set. I was trying to avoid that, but could not find a centered Harry Bird. So Harry Bird gave me some trouble, but happy with this one. And here's another example of a portrait card, just to give you another idea of how these can be tricky. So here's Willie Puddinhead Jones, and this is another card that I got raw at the National and got slabbed. You can see it got a very good 3, which, I guess because of the corners, honestly, because they're pretty rounded, but in terms of centering, it's going to be hard to find a better Willie Jones in my book. Okay, now moving on to what I think are some of the most difficult cards to find centered. And starting off with Luke Easter. This is a really super cool card. The reason this is difficult to find centered is because, as I can recall, when I kind of figured out what the uncut sheets looked like in terms of, you know, how the cards were originally laid out, Luke Easter was a corner card on one of the original uncut sheets. And corner cards are always susceptible for miscuts and off-centered issues. And so for that reason, it's really difficult to find a good centered Luke Easter card. This is one of the better ones that I saw out there, but you can see that it's still pretty off left to right. Along the same lines, you got Dale Mitchell. Really tricky card to find centered. You know, sometimes you can just be happy that the card has borders at all. This one is decent, and that should tell you something about how difficult this card is in terms of centering. Another recognizable name, a pretty famous card in this set, Yogi Berra. Really tricky to find this one centered. Another corner card among the original uncut sheets. And again, for that reason, that's why it's tricky to find centered. This one was pretty decent, I think, all things considered. And here's a manager card. This card just gave me all kinds of trouble. This is one of the last, I think, 5 cards that I held out on, and I finally found this one, and it's a 4, and like, this, to me, it's like an optical illusion still. Like, I still can't believe that I found this card in this condition and so well centered, because boy, I had lost hope pretty much. So for whatever reason, Charlie Dressen was super tricky. Here's another corner card, Whitey Lockman of the New York Giants, always off center. So I was really happy to have found this one. And then to wrap this up, 2 like serious optical illusions. Everybody knows Whitey Ford, the chairman of the board. Man, every time I see this, I still can't believe I have it. It is really nicely centered. It's not perfect, but it's still one of the best ones I've ever seen. And that it was a 5 kind of blew my mind when I found it. This card is really difficult to find centered. And one of the most difficult ones is Max Zircon of the Braves, and you can see this is a near mint 7. This card is everything but centered most of the time when you're looking it up, so was really happy to find this one. So when it comes to like cards that are you know, centered or not centered, you know, I guess it all depends. You know, I think it's good to have stuff that you're trying to accomplish as a collector. You know, you have certain conditions that you try to stick to, but it's sometimes difficult to find the stuff that matches your criteria, so to speak. And so when that's the case, you know, you have to kind of pull your trigger when your gut feels, you know, like it's the best choice you can make. In my book, it's like centering really matters to me. I'm not really interested in corners as much. But if I'm really happy with the card overall, and I also happen to know that the card has some serious issues in terms of centering, I might pull the trigger as I did in this set. You know, it's kind of changed a lot for me though, because I'm going pre-war, and pre-war, anything goes. So anyway, thanks so much for the contest, Rick. I encourage everybody to check out Vintage Oddball Cards, and I hope everybody enjoyed taking a look at these cards. Thanks very much, guys. Talk to you soon.